Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar, What's New and Next with Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops. Today, we'll walk you through some of the key updates, the enhancements, and essentially everything that's really new from a Citrix virtualization perspective. We're expecting these updates to take about 40 to 50 minutes of the allocated time today. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A chat window on your screen. We will do our best to respond to as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. At the end of the session, we'll also provide a handout which will contain a complete list of the resources and the links that have been used within the presentation for your reference. So please be on the lookout for this handout as it's uploaded towards the end. Finally, I'd like to confirm that today's presentation will also be recorded and it will be made available on demand. Okay, now I'll hand it over to our presenters and we can get started. Nitin?
Thanks, Louise. Good afternoon, everybody. And for the folks that are still on the West Coast time, good morning. My name is Nitin Sharma. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager with the Apps and Desktop Groups. I'm joined by my fellow colleague, Alan Formansky, Principal Product Marketing Manager of the Apps and Desktops Group. As Louise mentioned, we're going to cover some key enhancements and features that we recently released over the past couple quarters. We do these type of webinars a couple times a year, if you're not familiar with it. And then the features that we'll be covering are going to be for on-prem and our cloud customers. And we'll kind of differentiate which one's which as we go through. Before we get into the presentation, just a quick note from our lawyers. So the information, when we do these presentations, they're designed to be more informational purposes. So the disclaimer is, purchasing decisions or anything that we cover today shouldn't be incorporated in any sort of contractual agreements. This is mainly for educational purposes, so you guys can get a rough idea a good idea as far as what it is that we're releasing or have released. So first thing to kind of get into, one of the key updates is the cumulative update for our 1912 LTSR, or CU2. This LTSR is also available for XenApp and Xen Desktop versions 7.6 and 7.15. So if you're new to the LTSR program, it's important to note that there's no need for you to install the 1912 LTSR initial release. Instead, we actually recommend that you begin right with the 1912 LTSR CU2. For purposes of when you want to be aware of when that was released, we actually released that on November 19th.
Thanks, Nitin, and good day, everyone. Hope you're doing well out there. The automated configuration tool for virtual apps and desktops. This tool is now fully generally available, and it's designed to help you bring data from one or more on-premises environments and migrate that into Citrix Cloud with the Apps and Desktop service. In addition, you can also migrate from one Citrix Cloud environment to another, perhaps across geographies or different tenants. There's a variety of different object types that you can include in the migration, namely your policies, your applications, your desktops, and catalogs and machines to a certain extent, although there are some caveats and notes with machine creation services created catalogs. You can stage your migration. Think of this as almost like a Citrix configuration as code. So it's more than just a typical migration tool, of which I've had the, I'll say, privilege of working with Citrix migration tools over the past 12 plus years. For those that have that historical reference, we've had migration tools of Presentation Server 4.x to XenApp 6.x, and then XenApp 6 to 7 on the FMA platform. But this is much more than that. This is more around that desired state, so you can run this tool periodically and ensure all your DI, your tests, your dev, your various environments are all at the appropriate configuration. We've got some resources, a blog, POC guide, deployment guide, and a video as well, of which we'll show a quick snippet from right now. Let's take a look at this demo. So we begin in our on-premises test environment, and this is just a test environment, so there's not too much data here, but just to kind of give you a feel for what the tool can do. You'll notice some delivery groups. There's also applications, there's policies, so typical site environment on-premises, and we've got all that published. Now the tool, it's PowerShell-based commandlets. It's a very easy to use, an MSI install, and we begin by running the commandlet to export the configuration to files. Now, these files are in the YAML format, which is very similar to JSON. It's a self-descriptive format. Here you can see the various data types in machine catalogs, including the name, allocation type, SID information, and other relevant details. Now, these files are not digitally signed, so you can modify them as you see fit. Now, in order to push this information to Citrix Cloud, we first need to create our client or our API key pair. This allows us to communicate with the Citrix Cloud platform. So we'll go ahead and choose that option. And upon doing that, we'll be presented with our ID and our secret key that we can copy and securely store, or choose a download option and we'll receive a CSV file. Now, with that information, we'll go ahead and populate it in the customer info YAML file. So just two simple lines there. We'll go ahead and populate in our customer ID, client ID, and the secret key information. Next, we'll do the mappings of our zones to resource locations. So as you know, zones typically representing physical locations. So you might have, say, a Los Angeles zone, maybe a Miami zone, Tokyo, London, etc. We'll map those to the resource locations in Citrix Cloud. That's very easily done in the zone mapping file. We just create individual lines. Now at this point, we have what we need, and we can proceed to go ahead and push this information up to Citrix Cloud. If we're working with multiple source sites, we can override and merge in the data as we see fit. This tool is fairly configurable, so it lets us do those types of tasks as needed. And once the information is pushed up, we can go in and verify this specific data. So, use cases here, maybe we need to populate some data from production and bring it over to the DR or test environment, or maybe from a test environment to a dev environment, or maybe from one geography to another geography. This tool is generally available, and we encourage you to try it out in your own environment and see how it works for you.
That's good stuff, Alan. Next, I wanted to kind of introduce some updates that we made to our Cloud Connector. For folks that are not familiar with what the Cloud Connector tool is, it's basically a thing that allows customers to be able to connect Citrix Cloud services to their various resource locations. So the number of updates that we released recently, we've introduced connector versioning. So we're connector versioning. Admins can see what version of the connector that they're currently running and what context of versions that they should be running. The information is available under each connector. We also introduced connector update notifications. So now admins will be able to get notifications when a new connector update becomes available, when the updates have finished, or if there's a problem with the update. We also introduced preferred day of the week for connector updates. So now admins can select the day of the week that they want the updates to occur. They'll get a notification 8 to 13 days before the update begins. And during this time, they can also go into the connector page and update whenever they want by clicking the update button. So the update will be forced at the time, and it says and not be able to extend any further than that. There's actually a blog that we have that exists on our citrix.com blog site. You can actually just search for the word Cloud Connectors, and it's something that will kind of go a little bit further into what these updates mean and how they can be applied.
Yeah, that's a really good one and important to highlight, because maintaining the status of the environment through updates is critical, and especially in 24/7 environments, hitting the least loaded times. Let's talk a little bit about non-domain join machines and use cases for non-domain join. So I'm sure we all know that Active Directory has been king for years, but increasingly we're seeing use cases evolving around DevOps, third-party users, or contractors, or different portions of the network where it just might not make sense to have an Active Directory environment or machines that belong to an Active Directory domain. Maybe we're working with other IDPs, or we just need to manually specify specific users that have access to machines. We first introduced the ability to work with non-domain join machines as part of, as it was called then, our Citrix Managed Desktops DaaS-based offering, now known as Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops Standard for Azure. And we're pleased to announce that this capability is now available in the full Virtual Apps and Desktop service on Citrix Cloud. So again, expanded use case, really allowing it to handle contractors, temporary workers. This is a feature that's configured with PowerShell, just easy to leverage with the SDK, and you can assign specific users to machines as required. No Active Directory necessary. And as we'll see as we move throughout the deck, the non-domain joined sort of status is very much a part of our roadmap across various components to reduce the requirement for Active Directory across these different use cases.
Next, we've actually introduced a tool to actually help provide a sort of self-troubleshoot and automate checks on various components of the Citrix, your Citrix virtual app and desktop environment. We call it the Citrix Cloud Health Check Troubleshooting Tool. This is actually available for all Citrix virtual app and desktops customers. It's actually a pretty lightweight tool and pretty quick and easy to download. You'll get information like status on your VDAs, your storefront servers, your profile management for your apps and desktop service. I actually have a quick video that I can go through, and it kind of showcases what that looks like and how it is that how you can parse through some of the information that this tool populates. So I haven't gone through the initial installation. In this, we're assuming that we've already installed the health check tool. And you're running it on a tool. The tool is run on a domain joined machine. So in this one, we're going to actually launch the tool before we actually bring up the. First, we're going to bring up the VDAs, verify that their status is active, and then we're going to continue to see and run the actual health check tool to see if there's any specific issues. Notice that there is a couple of issues found, so you'll click the view details and actually showcase the issue and the relevant CTX article that you can reference to help resolve that. In this instance, there's a firewall specific issue, so the administrator can kind of log into that, modify the different rules here to ensure that that error no longer happens. The next up is checking to see the second error message that came up, and there's an issue with the desktop service status. Again, there's a CTX article that can be referenced to help guide the administrator to solve whatever this issue is. But in this instance, the admin is going to log in to the services and actually start the desktop service. And then once you do that, you can actually run the tool again, see if there's any other specific issues that you may run into. In this instance, there's one more thing that they need to check out. But the key thing here to note is the fact that we're introducing another tool to help admins, be able to diagnose and proactively resolve any specific issues before they start impacting any users, how they access their apps and desktops. And going beyond that, again, every quarter or every release that we do, our HDX teams are constantly updating aspects that improve that end user experience of your Citrix sessions. With every VDA release, they are optimizing the CPU and memory usage, ensuring that it's optimized for the backend if you're running it on-prem or you're posting your desktop sessions or app sessions in the cloud. Not going to go into each one of these individually, but I want to kind of touch on some of the key things here that were heavily in demand from our customers. First is Rendezvous explicit proxy support. So environments that use Citrix Gateway Service, we introduced the Rendezvous protocol that allowed HDX sessions to bypass that Citrix Cloud Connector and connect directly and securely to the gateway service. Now we're allowing customers to apply explicit proxies with Rendezvous. So these are like transparent proxies, non-transparent HTTP proxies, or SOX5 proxies. Those are all supported. Another thing we've introduced is we've improved and enhanced the drag and drop file across ICA sessions. Now this is, of course, if your organization allows the user to drag and drop between ICA sessions, but now you can drag and drop files, groups of files, directories, group directories, or a combination of files and directories to and from the same client on the session. Again, this capability applies to desktop sessions as well as seamless app sessions. Another thing we introduced that was pretty unique, it's pretty requested for a specific use case. It's a graphics quality slider. So if you're an end user in a Citrix session and there's on the bottom right-hand side, there's a little toggle that you can prioritize whether or not you want your session to prioritize performance or visual quality over one or the other. Why would you want to do this? Well, in some instances, you may have like a graphic designer or a CAD engineer that, you know, for some reason their Citrix session could be running into a little bit of poor bandwidth. So normally the Citrix session will prioritize performance so that user can keep working. But if they really need to see rich visual quality, they can actually toggle that and ensure that they have an optimized visual quality in that moment. And the next, similar to our HDX teams, our Linux teams are constantly making regular updates with every current release. Our main thing that the Linux teams are doing is making sure that the Linux VDAs are on feature parity with Windows VDA. Similar to the HDX slide, not necessarily going to go through with each individual component here, but the key thing here is we've introduced more platform support. We have Debian 10 support, Red Hat Enterprise 7.9, and Ubuntu 2004 support has gone GA. We've also introduced, if you're running remote PC on a Linux virtual machine or Linux machine, we've introduced Wake on Link for that. We've also improved the data points that could be received through Citrix Director for Linux virtual machines. So now you can actually see CPU and memory usage, whereas prior to that type of information wasn't explicitly available. This is a good example of what that looks like in Director. Kind of showcases the trends over time. You can actually see that VM and the CPU utilization as well as memory utilization.
Awesome stuff, Nin. I particularly love that the drag and drop between sessions. That is just so slick. Something as seamless as that just really makes for a fantastic user experience. All right, so Workspace Environment Management. You know, this is a solution that we've had around for quite some time, available both on-premises and in the cloud. Now, when customers ask about Workspace Environment Management, my response is simple. If you're not using it, you're literally leaving money on the table. WEM ensures that you're providing the best possible scalability, user density, best possible logon times and logon experience for your users, fair sharing of resources across the environment. It literally allows you to get the best possible benefit out of whatever investment you've made across your infrastructure, be it cloud or on premises. I went ahead and I did a blog recently, the WEM test results, some great data there from our engineering teams. I encourage everyone to check that out. And we did a session on TechZone Live, fixing noisy neighbors. That's all around where you have that one user that's pegging the CPU on a multi-session host, and therefore it affects other users on that host, and they inevitably have to call the help desk. WEM intelligently detects that, dials down the request for resources, and does that fair sharing to ensure that everyone gets a great experience and users stay productive. Now look at all these innovations that have happened over the past couple quarters now. Things around agent cache handling for non-persistent environments, being able to recreate the cache automatically within WEM, contextual filtering for GPOs, being able to intelligently apply Microsoft GPOs and then filter by Citrix specific criteria, such as delivery groups, in addition to your traditional Active Directory attributes and WMI and so forth. Being able to monitor profile containers and checking size and health of your profile containers. I'll draw your attention to the bottom left here, reducing resource consumption of idle sessions. We all have idle sessions in our environment. These could be sessions that are active but idle in use, or perhaps they might be disconnected sessions. In any case, they're consuming resources in your environment. WEM is able to detect that, intelligently dial down those resource requests, and ultimately bring up the scalability in your environment. A number of other great innovations here, memory optimization and how you specify the thresholds there, with the theme of non-domain joined VDAs. Now in the WEM cloud service, you're able to take advantage of non-domain joined VDAs and WEM. And then towards the bottom right, this one's pretty slick, and you'll receive a link to a video that we did on it recently, privilege elevation for standard users. So the use case here is you have your legacy apps, homegrown apps, custom apps that require administrators for your user base. And we know that's not secure to make users admins in order to have to run specific apps. With Workspace Environment Management, you can specify executables and folders as well as time windows in which you'd like those processes to be elevated under a separate context aside from the individual users. So it's completely seamless. It allows the users to do what they need to do while at the same time maintaining that secure posture that is absolutely critical. And as you see towards the top right, the WEM agent is more integrated than ever. It's now in the VDA installer, and the WEM console is more integrated, and that's within the Apps and Desktop Service console. So a lot of great stuff happening around WEM. Again, whether you're on premises, whether you're in the cloud, most versions, additions, and entitlements allow you to take advantage of Workspace Environment Management. We strongly encourage that you do that. Don't leave money on the table. Next up, I want to spend a moment talking about our investments with Google, specifically Google Cloud Platform. A lot of great work happening with Google across the board, be it on the endpoint side with our support for Chrome and some of the innovation there, Chromebooks, and then of course on the cloud side, and really bringing online some fantastic integration around Google Cloud Platform from a VM perspective, security perspective, networking perspective. So we're really working together, and you're going to continue to see that in the months to come. A lot of great customer implementations that have happened at scale. And we'll see here that we also have TechZone content. In fact, a dedicated section on TechZone, if you head out to techzone.citrix.com, just for Google Cloud Platform. It's really that active. So I want to give a shout out to our colleagues on our cloud innovation team and some of the other teams that produce a lot of this fantastic content, reference architectures, POC guides. And whether or not Google Cloud Platform is your cloud of choice, remember at Citrix, one of our key pillars is providing choice for our customers, because in many times, you might have specific use cases to run Azure for some workloads. Maybe you have specific use cases for AWS or Google or IBM Cloud. And that's why we believe we want to allow our customers to run workloads in the cloud of their choice as it makes sense for whatever reason.
Cool stuff, Alan. I also wish I had a tool to fix the noisy neighbor with his leaf blower every Sunday morning at 7. So going on to the building on the aspect of what Alan was mentioning about choice, we're actually proud to announce that we've come out with the capability of allowing customers to be able to deploy desktop as a service workloads on demand within their virtual app and desktop service. So, virtual app and desktop service continues to be like that go-to solution for customers on their cloud journey, regardless on where they are on their hybrid cloud spectrum. So essentially our goal has always been for customers to bring together the on-premise deployments alongside that public cloud hosting to meet various business needs at their own pace and go to the cloud at their own pace. As we've heard from many administrators throughout the calendar year of 2020, there's a big need to scale rapidly and securely. We also know that in some cases, such as contractor hires, MAs, M&As, or temporary workers, you always want the same benefits of scale with some additional isolation, from your primary Azure subscription. So, we partnered with Microsoft, and wouldn't a separate Azure subscription managed and maintained by the industry-leading virtualization vendor like Citrix, be the perfect solution? So now you can subscribe to what's called Citrix Managed Azure and lever it to deploy your workloads within the matter of minutes. That's a key thing here. I've seen this in action, the ability to deploy an app and desktop within 5 clicks. It's pretty simple. It's got pay-as-you-go monthly subscriptions, simplified infrastructure management. And the key thing to highlight is it's included with Citrix Virtual App and Desktop Standard for Azure, Advanced and Premium service, as well as Workspace Premium Plus. Taking it one click down, it's basically you have subscription as pay-as-you-go, and there's a couple of servicing options. You can pre-purchase consumption funds and have them available to leverage when you need it, or you can subscribe to Citrix Managed Azure and be billed monthly. Customers can also leverage their Microsoft Azure consumption commitment via Azure Marketplace. It's important to note that this actually allows support for multi-session or single-session Windows or Linux and Windows operating systems. And just a kind of quick highlight of some of the key regions that Citrix Managed Azure is available. If you need a specific region that you don't necessarily see here, You can always use and leverage your BYO Azure for that specific catalog deployment. And on the topic of continuing on putting, speeding up the capability of putting apps and desktops within Azure in a fast and efficient way, we updated our quick deploy feature within Citrix Virtual App and Desktop Service to enable that simplified option to quickly deploy apps and desktops on Azure. So we imported that actual Citrix Virtual App and Desktop standard for Azure UI into our advanced and premium editions of the Virtual App and Desktop Service to provide that simple solution to deploy to Azure really quickly. So this is ideal for customers that are looking to leverage Win10 multi-session via Windows Virtual Desktop.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And I have to admit that I use the quick deploy myself in the test Citrix Cloud environments. It really is the fastest way to deploy. So why not take advantage of it? Now let's talk a little bit about resiliency and availability. We're incredibly proud to announce that service continuity is in tech preview and will become generally available soon. Okay, so what exactly is service continuity? Well, service continuity is designed to provide as good as, or in many cases better than, on-premises resiliency. In fact, we've had around 80 customers so far officially submit requests to participate in the tech preview program as of late Q1. And this solution works effectively if you have an issue with the communication from your cloud connector back to the Citrix Cloud Management Platform, or even if Citrix Cloud is having to have an issue at that particular point in time, users are still able to connect. As long as there's a direct path from the endpoint through any gateway appliance to the back-end VDA, users will still be able to connect in a very seamless manner. I would go so far as to say that this is going to be an industry game-changing innovation around virtual app and desktop delivery. In fact, what we're seeing so far is that customers are choosing Citrix Cloud over traditional on-premises environments or even versus the competition for this feature alone because of the availability and resilience that it provides. And this feature isn't even generally available yet. It's got that much excitement around it. Now, it is available in tech preview format. If you're a virtual apps and desktop service customer, now you can enable it with a feature toggle. You no longer have to reach out to us. If you are using it, we strongly encourage you, please reach out to our product management team via this email alias, servicecontinuity@citrix.com. They'd love to hear your feedback as we approach general availability. You see it's for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. I do want to note though, Linux is for full Linux distros as opposed to customized distros that you find on thin clients, for example. And then I also want to call out how this might compare to things like localhost cache. Localhost cache has existed for quite some time, but it's just not designed to handle the nature and scope of outages that service continuity can in terms of cloud connector failures or full-on platform failures. So this is much more comprehensive overall, and it uses these long-lived secure lease files on the endpoint. In fact, let's take a closer look at how this particular feature works. So here we are on a Windows 10 endpoint. We've got our Workspace app up, and I'm just going to begin by refreshing my list of applications. Now we're currently online, so we have access to all the applications and things will behave as normal. Upon logging in, these long-lived lease files are automatically and securely downloaded to my endpoint. So these are JSON files. They are signed, so they cannot be tampered with and still remain valid. All right, so those are automatically and seamlessly, this is all happening in the background. Now we're online, so I'm going to launch Microsoft Word, and you'll notice it launches just like a standard application would, nothing out of the ordinary here. Then I'll proceed to close this particular published application, and then I will exit Workspace app, not logging out, but just go ahead and exit Workspace app. The next thing we'll do is we will simulate a platform outage, and we'll simulate the Citrix Cloud platform outage to the host file by just putting in some erroneous IP information for those FQDNs. And now when we relaunch Workspace app, we're in an outage mode and we can't communicate with Citrix Cloud. The user is notified, hey, we're unable to connect to some of your resources, but some may still be available. In fact, most still are. Now when we launch Word, remember, we don't have the Citrix Cloud backend platform to communicate with at this point in time. We are still going through an appropriate gateway, and we're launching the VDA. In this case, I believe it's coming from Azure. Since we don't have the authentication platform, users are prompted to enter their credentials. And in many cases, very straightforward, very seamless. So we'll just enter our credentials here. And upon entering our credentials, in just a moment, we will be presented with this application. So what we've done here is we've provided an extreme form of resilience and availability. What would have been potentially an outage, which who knows how long it may last for, and it could be help desk calls, lost productivity, increased costs for the organization. We've completely bypassed all of that, and we're able to provide this great level of resilience and availability for customers. So dare I say, this is game changing then.
That's good stuff. I still recall when that project was still in its infancy, and how a lot of folks were looking at it as like a way of addressing a lot of the key concerns when it comes to, customers that are looking to move to the cloud. How do they ensure uninterrupted service? So that actually helps improve the end user experience. But I'm actually proud to announce a new update that actually improves the administrative experience when it comes to managing virtual apps and desktops. So we're proud to announce the general availability of Citrix Web Studio. This is now going to be the new default studio, and leveraging your apps and desktops, both for advanced and premium editions. The new studio actually not only brings a new web UI, but it's also mostly an increased response time for admin commands. Also, simplification of managing workloads to help admins manage their environments with agility. We've introduced some new things in there, and some other things that you're already familiar with. Studio now supports using CSV files in bulk to add machines to a catalog. So this feature will enable you to use a CSV file to bulk add machines to a multi-session or single session OS catalog where machines are not powered or managed through Studio, or bulk add machines to a remote PC access catalog. We've also introduced things like delegated administration, which is useful for large companies where administrators have sort of that defined areas of responsibility. For example, an administrator responsible for an image management can create and modify machine catalogs, but cannot allocate users to delivery groups. It's pretty useful, but really the main thing that it's the immediate noticeable thing about Web Studio is just how fast it is. And this is a good example of a video that showcases how responsive it is compared to our legacy Studio. So if you notice, I'm just going to go ahead and log in, and I'm trying to go through the applications node. And it takes a little time to enumerate, the type of information I need within that node. So doing that same node within Web Studio, if you click applications, it takes 1 second. Now, granted, 15 seconds to 1 second doesn't really necessarily sound like a big deal, but when you're multiplying that throughout the day, that essentially adds up.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? If we take it within context, it's just a few seconds, but you do that a number of times, and it'll definitely add up. Azure Marketplace updates. So working with our partner Microsoft and how customers are looking to transact with us, we're expanding what's possible through the Azure Marketplace and what you can purchase through the Azure Marketplace. Now, we realize many customers are taking advantage of Azure Marketplace purchases for Citrix. It could be maybe not just an SMB type organization, but even various project teams or groups within larger organizations that prefer to transact through a marketplace. And some updates here include the Virtual Apps and Desktops Premium offering, now available in the marketplace. We've expanded for tier pricing, added to our Virtual Apps and Desktops and the Workspace Premium Plus products. There's monthly and tier pricing available for our DaaS offering, the CVAD standard for Azure, as well as Citrix Managed Azure Consumption Funds. So these are funds that you can pre-purchase or sign up for monthly billing. And again, it's all around providing choice and flexibility for how you'd like to interact and leverage your environment. Speaking about Azure, Azure Shared Image Gallery with machine creation services. So this is designed to really help speed up the VM boot time by leveraging this platform feature. We're essentially staging the virtual machines in the Azure Shared Image Gallery. Standard SSD disk type support. As you may know, we've had support for premium disks in Azure, and that's still what we recommend for production because of the not just performance, but also the SLAs that they bring with them. But what about those dev and test environments, or maybe environments that are less critical? Well, now you can take advantage of standard SSD disk types as well when you're provisioning VMs. And layer on top of it, of course, all the other innovations and performance enhancements that we're talking about here today. Single resource group in Azure, we're continuing to expand the limits, or so-called configuration limits, in terms of what's possible in a given deployment and how far we can scale up versus scaling out. And the single resource group in Azure is a good example of that for larger environments and being able to contain all of our resources within one nice confined single resource group. Security, and security has been a big topic in monitoring in general. We have some updates around session recording, and now we support AWS RDS database. So AWS is cloud-based database. We've previously had support for Azure Cloud SQL, and now expanding our cloud-native technologies for customers that are leveraging AWS. It's one less database to have to set up and interface with another team in your organization. Then we're also really excited about the new unified web player. This was released later on in 2020, just a few months ago, and this enables a very seamless playback experience. And we'll go ahead and show the video now to give you a little feel for this really nice streamlined player. So here we are in our web browser. We can easily review sessions, playing them back. We can also filter and search for specific sessions across different criteria, such as event type or username, or look for things such as maybe when a user inserted a USB flash drive and detect that type of event. Once we've found ones that we want to view, we can, of course, view the session. We can comment on the session at given time intervals. If something maybe doesn't look right, we can just put a little note in there and set a comment priority. So highly configurable, highly streamlined, and much more simplified than running the standalone player, fully integrated within the browser. So for our session recording customers, if you're taking advantage of it either in premium or taking advantage of it in apps and desktop service, definitely check out the new session recording player.
Good stuff, Alan. So just want to quickly touch on some of the key Workspace app updates. Again, the teams that work for the various platforms, they're regularly floating out new versions of Workspace app with a lot of performance and stability improvements. But to quickly touch on some of the bigger feature enhancements, if you're a Workspace app for Mac user, we've introduced support for the Apple M1 chip. For Chrome OS Workspace app, we now provide support for 64-bit webcams. And for Linux Workspace app users, we've increased the virtual channel max size from 32 to 64. One thing to note from the Workspace app team, their main goal is now to also ensure that there's going to be feature parity support for Microsoft Teams optimization across all of the major platforms. That's pretty important for any customers that are either leveraging Microsoft Teams optimization through Citrix Virtual Apps today, or they're planning on doing that in the near future.
Yeah, that's good stuff there. So innovation on the client side as well, and different platforms that we can support. I want to spend a few minutes talking about analytics. In a delivery infrastructure, there's a vast amount of data that's generated, really across the entire digital workspace for that matter. But how do we go about making sense of it, being proactive, and also determining what's actionable? Well, that's where Citrix Analytics comes into play. We have both security analytics that spans the entire Citrix digital workspace, and then performance analytics that's closely tied to our virtual apps and desktops offerings. Now, with security analytics, it's really designed around a zero trust approach and defense in-depth mechanisms. We recently released the Geo-fencing capability in security analytics, and this has been incredibly valuable in the distributed work model that the pandemic has brought about. Customers have been able to explicitly specify which countries and even which cities are allowed or disallowed, or perhaps even ones that maybe require additional security layers. If you're connecting from, say, outside of trusted sites or trusted countries, then maybe we enable session recording, or maybe we enable or disallow, for that matter, things like copy and paste and other virtual channels. So it's a true geofencing capability, and we've got some great stories around Citrix Analytics. We encourage you to head on over to citrix.com/customers and check out all the stories on not just Citrix Analytics, but all the other apps and desktops offerings and customers for that matter. One that I'll call out here in particular is a company by the name of Kaizen Approach. Now, this is a security consulting firm that takes advantage of security analytics for their infrastructure and their customers' infrastructure, and it's helped them across the board in terms of maintaining a very strong security posture, understanding which users are high risk, which are lower risk, and putting in place things like geofencing that we're discussing here. In fact, they even went so far as to say that Citrix Analytics is their new favorite Citrix product, that we thought was pretty cool. Now let's talk a little bit about performance analytics. So this is closely tied to virtual apps and desktops environments, both on premises and or in the cloud. You can aggregate multiple environments for that single pane of glass view. And this team has produced incredible innovation over the past few months. Here we're just looking at a few, and then we'll be looking at additional ones in the coming slides, but things like user dashboard enhancements and providing the right level of data as required, logon duration insights, and really leveraging machine learning and helping admins better and more proactively optimize logon durations before users are calling the help desk saying that their sessions are slow or taking a long time to load. So a lot of great innovation that's happened here. And of course, you can take advantage of a trial of analytics if you just head over to analytics.cloud.com. Well, let's look at one particular feature here. And this particular feature that we're going to look at is the feature of overloaded machines. So here we are in analytics, and we're going to drill into users with poor UX. Performance analytics automatically classifies users by poor, average, or excellent user experience. Then it breaks down various categories by availability, session responsiveness, logon duration. We're interested in overloaded machines, of which there's 12 that have been detected automatically. So as we drill in here, we'll be presented with a view of all these 12 machines that were overloaded at some point, and you can see the various columns. We can filter this data as we see fit. Now we know that Citrix sessions are CPU bound, so we'll go ahead and sort by CPU to see which particular machines had the highest CPU utilization. And then across different time dimensions, here we see the CPU peak was 97.8%. So that's pretty loaded. And remember, even with load evaluators, we're directing users to specific hosts, but we can't exactly predict what they're doing on these hosts. Performance analytics will help. Now look at this. Right at the time where there's a spike in CPU utilization, that correlates with sessions having poor user experience. That's pretty coincidental, I would say. Now remember, users that are on overloaded machines, that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll have poor user experience. However, oftentimes it is a good indicator, and performance analytics will help you pinpoint these specific machines and users that have been affected in your environment. So it's a fantastic new feature that's been introduced in performance analytics to really make sense of all that vast amount of data. Now there's some additional capabilities as well. Something as trivial as color-coded insights. Now we're able to color code, specifically in either red or amber, metrics that require attention as you're running your self-service queries in analytics. So here we can look at not just session responsiveness numbers, but see that there are a fair amount that are over 300 milliseconds in terms of round trip times, or looking at session logon duration or profile load times. So we immediately know what's acceptable, what's not, and then we can proceed to take action. Visual summary as well. Here we're looking at the self-service area, and we've just run a basic query looking at launch sessions that have succeeded and the endpoint country that doesn't match a specific criteria. And here you can see the endpoint city distribution and the number of sessions. So previously we would just present this information in a tabular format. Now we're actually showing many of these query results in a visual format, so a lot more engaging. And of course, the ability to export and take the data into your other visualization tools of choice. Failure insights. So this one's a really key one in performance analytics. I'll draw your attention to the right side of the screen where we have the black hole machines and communication errors. So black hole machines, these are VDAs which user connections have been directed to, but these machines are not accepting connections for whatever reason. That could be because the services may be recently hung for whatever reason, or you're having some licensing issues or other factors. Now, these can be very time consuming to troubleshoot and pinpoint. Citrix Analytics makes it very easy, and it even gives you recommended steps on how you go about remedying these specific problems on the machines that it's identified for you. Under communication errors, you can see we have 2 failures, but it's not just going to tell you that this user couldn't connect or there was an issue with this backend VDA. It goes much deeper than that. It shows the various points along the connection path from endpoint to gateway to machine and helps you remedy the situation in the most time efficient and proactive manner possible. Then we have availability insights. We all know that we can look at VDAs and which ones have registered with our controller, be it on premises and or cloud, but what's the true availability of our estate, right? What is the utilization? And performance analytics, again, breaks it down in very consumable metrics. This particular environment's over 87% available, which is pretty good. And for the almost 13% that's unavailable, we can click and drill into this further and see why that may be the case. Again, maybe it's due to licensing, maybe the machines have some communication issue, maybe the networking team had made some changes, so we can delve into that further. Now we break this across various time dimensions as well. So how does the availability look across the week versus the weekend? Maybe this is a 24/7 environment, and of course it's critical that we maintain maximum availability across the board. So really allowing you to maintain that focus across a variety of different metrics. Time dimensions are customizable, delivery groups are customizable, and you can proceed through the data as you see fit there. Machine actions allows you to take actions on machines right from within performance analytics. So here there's no need to context switch between analytics and the Citrix Director monitoring console. Now, if you spot an issue, for example, you can automatically go in and put that machine in maintenance mode, begin draining users, or maybe shut down or restart the machine if that's required. And then we have executive visibility. So one of the things about making sense of all the data in your environment is ensuring that management teams have that level of visibility in terms of what does the availability look like? What does the user experience look like across this environment, right? This investment that we've made. And executive visibility reports allows you to do that. And not just that, but it also allows you to schedule the reports too. So here we can see on this screen, you can go ahead and save common queries, and you can send it out daily, weekly. This way your management teams can be informed on the overall status of the environment. And again, consumable means that make sense for them.
That's good stuff, Alan. So now, closing out some of the feature aspects of our presentation, wanted to quickly highlight some of the recent industry certifications Virtual App and Desktop has attained. Citrix was now approved for the LTSR 1912 was approved for common criteria. And second, the Citrix Cloud was approved for FedRAMP ready status. You can actually find more details on this in our Security Trust Center and compliance part of our website, which is .com/about/trust center. So you get a little bit more details on that. Now, we went through a lot of these features, the various technologies that would be tech preview, but now we want to kind of highlight some of the ways that we've improved how you get access to key information. We've actually just recently announced released the Virtual App and Desktop product roadmap. It's online. It's a single web page that will be providing regular updates as far as existing features, any upcoming features as well. And also, a key thing here, it includes a number of public tech previews for the ability to sign up and take advantage and try out some of the upcoming technologies that we're working on. And for one of the main feedback we've always got, and it's always been, even for myself, if I'm trying to look for information on our various editions, we used to have various matrices that I had to navigate and various URLs I had to keep bookmarking to go back and reference. We noticed that that necessarily wasn't the most efficient way to gather information. So we're actually proud to announce that we've improved that by introducing the new virtual app and desktop feature matrix that actually now allows you to compare key features across cloud services, on premises, as well as look at various deployment comparisons. It's a longer URL, but the key thing is you could literally now just Google Citrix Virtual App and Desktop Feature Matrix, and it'll be the main thing that pops up.
Yeah, that's really slick stuff, and shout out to our colleagues that worked really hard on those initiatives around the roadmap and the feature matrix consolidation. Citrix and Windows Virtual Desktop. You know, this is a hot topic. Windows Virtual Desktop is Microsoft's Azure-based cloud VDI solution. It's a turnkey DaaS offering with exclusive capabilities like the Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session that allows multiple users to connect to a Windows 10 instance without requiring any RDS CALs. So Windows Virtual Desktop has been incredibly attractive to customers. But you know, this is a very similar story. And I really equate this to the value that Citrix has provided across Microsoft for years and years. The value that we provided on top of terminal services and remote desktop services, and now in the cloud, the value that we provide on top of Windows Virtual Desktop or Windows Virtual Desktop entitlement. Using Citrix with your Windows Virtual Desktop entitlement allows you to do far more while ultimately spending less over the life cycle of your environment. And what we've done is we've actually put together this nice, nifty little cost calculator tool that we'll take a quick demo look at here. We've included the link for. So we start off by specifying the number of users, the number of peak users in your environment. Defaults to 1,000. You can put it up to 10,000 or as low as 50 or anywhere in between. Then specify the workload platform. I'll leave it at Windows 10 multi-session because that's a key attractive feature of Azure and Windows Virtual Desktop. And then your user type. Is this medium workload? Is it more heavy? Is it light? And that's it. From here, all we have to do is go ahead and click Calculate Now. And we've done all the hard work for you. By conservative Citrix engineering testing efforts, this is the savings that you can realize by leveraging Citrix and your Windows Virtual Desktop entitlement versus using Windows Virtual Desktop alone or possibly Windows Virtual Desktop with other point solutions. So you're able to do far more across a number of dimensions, things like compute and networking, monitoring, all the great innovations that we've talked about here today, and being able to right-size your VMs, auto-scale technology, intelligent power management so that you're making efficient use of the resources when you're managing those resources in Azure. Networking, what about the egress traffic from Azure? Being able to optimize that with our industry-leading ICA protocol and HDX technologies. So I'd encourage you to take a look at this calculator. It breaks it down, and this is the initial version that we literally released just a few short weeks ago. We will be posting additional updates to it in the coming weeks and months to get even more granular on the true Citrix value and cost savings that can be realized with Citrix on top of Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure. One other thing we'd like to leave you with is about learning and knowledge. And when we talk about cloud, we realize that cloud is a journey, and everyone's on a different journey that makes sense for their organization for cloud and hybrid cloud. To that end, on April 10th, we will be releasing a new cloud learning series on our training platform, training.citrix.com. This is an ongoing set of cloud courses that covers a broad collection of services and concepts. So even if you're primarily an on-premises customer today, that's totally fine. There's some great content here and consideration points and technologies that would make sense to ramp up your skill set with. The best part is this is free to most customers. All customers with active select, priority, or priority plus support are entitled to this training offering. And then it's also included in our all access learning subscription plan. So launching April 10th, check it out, training.citrix.com. You'll see it front and center.
Cool, thanks, Alan. So that I'll hand it over to Luis as we wrap up covering over the features, and we'll start taking some questions.
Yeah, great. I'd now like to open up for some questions. Just as a reminder for our attendees, if you do have a question which you haven't yet submitted, please feel free to submit it via the chat window on your screen. I do already see a fair few here, but of course, if we don't get to the opportunity to answer them today, by popping that in the window, we'll be sure to follow up with a response separately. And now with that, we can kick off with our first question. We've got a few here around service continuity. One is, what is the timeline, if any, for support of service continuity with thin client devices?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Around thin client devices, we're continuing to work with our thin client vendors through the Citrix Ready program. It's tough to give any timelines, not just from a legal perspective, but because various thin client vendors make different customizations to the images that we provide to them. So I would say stay tuned. If you do have specific questions or thin clients or platforms that are of particular interest to your organization, we encourage you to reach out to that email alias, servicecontinuity@citrix.com. We'd love to hear them and prioritize them accordingly as we head towards general availability for the feature.
Great, thanks. Just staying on the same topic, how does it work for multi-tier applications when they're unable to connect to the internet?
That's a good question. So if it's a multi-tiered application, or any application for that matter, the application itself needs to have its own resiliency, and the application needs to ensure that it is making itself available. Service continuity helps with the resiliency throughout the connection path within Citrix, inclusive of the Cloud Connector, inclusive of the Citrix Cloud Platform, and it's designed to mask any outages of those components. If you have a multi-tiered application that experiences an outage, then you would want to plan for availability and resiliency with that particular application, including multiple resource locations, multiple backends, and really architect the resiliency in so that you have various layers of the resilience and availability that you require in the environment.
Great, and I see this staying on the same topic. Is there any difference between local host cache and service continuity that you can speak to?
Yeah, that's a great one, and there is. So essentially, localhost cache is a feature that provides a given amount of availability. Service continuity takes that much further and is designed to mask a broader array of potential outages that might occur across the entire Citrix Cloud Platform, specifically with Workspace or other Citrix Cloud services or the Cloud Connector. Localhost cache is more designed to provide availability, perhaps with hybrid cloud environments and storefront. So localhost cache absolutely still does have its place. The service continuity is more cloud focused, and it's more multi-component focused, providing that resilience and availability.
Thanks, Alan. General question here, what's the max number of VMs supported on Azure Single Resource Group?
So with the single resource group in Azure, I have to double check the configuration limits, but I know our teams have tested in the thousands. And of course, in terms of a resource location, our recommendation is 5,000 typically per resource location. We're always testing and increasing the number of our configuration limits and the scale. And we can certainly follow up and provide the link, or if you search Citrix scalability limits, we have that doc out on our doc site that lists much of that information. Great,
thanks, Alan. Another question, general here, how to load balance apps on non-domain Citrix servers. Do we have any information that we can share or point the asker to?
For load balancing applications, we might maybe need to inquire a little bit more about that particular question. With traditional application load balancing, we can front end the applications with our application delivery controller, Citrix ADC, formerly Citrix NetScaler. So that could be an option depending on the application and the type of requests that need to be made through the application. So there's a variety of different things that we can do from a load balancing perspective. And then if we're, of course, running this application as a published app, it's like a Windows app or even as a published web app or Linux-based app, we can, using our virtual apps and desktop service, or just virtual apps and desktops in general, we can load balance accordingly across multiple hosts and multiple regions. So a few options there.
Great, thanks. And finally, one here for Citrix Analytics. Is it available for on-prem Citrix customers?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great one. I'm glad someone asked that. Common misconception, Citrix Analytics is available for both on-premises customers and cloud customers. And for customers of both, you can aggregate multiple environments together to get that single pane of glass. It's sold as an add-on. You can take advantage of security analytics, performance analytics, or we have a bundle that includes both of them. And as many of our customers have said, it literally pays for itself in time in terms of improving the security posture, improving performance, reducing help desk calls. So check out that demo, as I mentioned, analytics.cloud.com.
Fantastic, thank you. And one final question that just came through that we have time for today. Can we just confirm, is service continuity included with CVAD subscription, or is it an added cost?
So the service continuity will be included. It's a capability of the apps and desktop service. So if you're a customer of the apps and desktop service, as I mentioned, it's available now in tech preview via a feature toggle. We have links that are sent out in the link doc, so that's already been posted in the handout section of GoToWebinar. We encourage you to take a look at that, and you can easily enable that in your environment and give it a try yourself.
Great, thanks. Those are really all of the questions we have time for today. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Nitin and Alan. Great presentation today on those topics. And as a reminder to everyone on the webinar, we will be making it available on demand in case you'd just like to revisit it at a later date or to share it with your colleagues. And of course, please make sure that you download the handout that we've provided in the window of GoToWebinar today. This gives you quick access to all of the resources and links that Alan and Nitin have spoken to and showcased throughout the presentation. Once again, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you on the next webinar. Have a great day.